WWE Smackdown from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and this one was a nothing burger. It was a nothing burger. Let's get into it. We start the show with Cody Rhodes, QB1, and Ricky Starks. I'm sorry, Ricky Saints, wherever did that name come from? Oh, well, these still old friends, no? So we're just going to pretend like Cody Rhodes had nothing to do with why Ricky Starks, Ricky Saints, was hired to the WWE? Okay, let's move on. That takes us to a match between Charlotte Flair and JCJ. A little get back for last week, I guess. Of a surprise, although it probably shouldn't have been. JCJ picks up the victory. That takes us to a tag team match between Damian Priest and R-Truth versus Axiom. I would actually give this my match of the night. I thought this was a very good match, well worked. Axiom and Nathan Frazier work so well together, they always have. It's been a while since we had that introductory match with Nathan Frazier on the main roster. He looked so good that night. Thought we'd see more of him, more action-packed match. Kind of thought this was a new era, but no, same old, same old. Keep them in catering. Again, this highlights a problem I have with the WWE, having too many singles wrestlers come together and make up a tag team who considerably run through the entire tag team division, which I feel like it gives problems to the tag team division as it is. All the same, these boys put on a hell of a match. Absolutely fantastic. Damian Priest, I actually thought looked very good. Nathan Frazier, again, I mean, there's not much I can say, quite frankly, that I haven't said before about Nathan Frazier. So, yeah, altogether, best match of the night. The fans told you that as the match was going on. This is awesome, and it was. So, congratulations to you four. Best match of the night, Damian Priest, R-Truth, and Fraxian. So that took us to a promo spot, as it were, the interruption after the match. Solo and Talatunga absolutely wiping out everyone, and then Solo having his say on the mic. This is quite interesting to me, the overspill with the Usos and the MFTs almost getting involved in this new formation of the Bloodline, or Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu war. Very, very interesting, I must say, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going. I can't see the vision quite yet, but I guess it's also been interesting to me to think that there's so many people from this family on the roster that an all-out war would make sense. I guess they kind of did a little bit of that at War Games, but I think it was still a little bit soft at War Games. So there's always more potential. Let's see where they go with this. That took us to the match between Cody Rhodes and Ricky Saints. And you got it right. It was an okay match. I don't find Ricky Saints matches all that interesting. I think he had a measure of more, about him as far as a wrestler goes when he was in AEW. Since he has come to the WWE roster, he's gotten over. I just haven't gotten on board with it as much as I think the character was in AEW. So I think this is understandable. Him versus Cody Rhodes was natural, considering the relationship they had before. I understand it was a fairly close relationship, and I understand that he had something to do with Ricky Saint Starks being hired to the WWE. It's someone that he very much liked when he was in AEW, when Cody was at the helm of AEW. So understandable for them to have this match, especially his first outing on the roster. As I said, I don't think it was anything to write home about the match. Although I will say Cody hit a gnarly crossroads on him, landed right on his head, and then body weight on top of that. It was not good. So I hope Ricky is okay. Let's see where he goes from here. I think he'll be bouncing around the intercontinental sphere. Love to see a match between him and Mello. That seems like it would be absolutely fantastic. So next, that takes us to a match between Royce Keys and Angel Garza. Angel Garza. Anyway, I think this is very interesting. I think there's some flaws being done here. I believe that it would have been better to put more promotional push behind Royce Keys, aka Powerhouse Hobbs. If you intend to make him into something a little bit like Obafemi, just look at the push that you put behind Obafemi. I don't think winning the Andre the Giant Memorial is going to do it. And I think the second you had this man crying on a podcast, I understand it was very emotional. It's about a time in his life and probably all very real. We're looking at wrestling here. I just think it seemed a little bit too performative. I'm not saying it was. It seemed a little bit too performative. And you're in a sport where people are essentially competing gladiatorial style to a certain extent. You can't have this man crying on a podcast. How exactly you think you're going to get him over now, I don't know. I don't know, but I don't see it. Even when you have him doing what's essentially squash matches, it really doesn't matter. I think you're going to have a serious problem trying to get him over like you do Oba as this big, powerful monster. And I think eventually it's all going to end in him going back to AEW, unfortunately. That's probably terrible because if I'm being honest, I watched AEW and thought to myself, Powerhouse Hobbs would be absolutely fantastic on WWE TV because he can cut promos, he can work, and he can tell stories so well, especially within the context of a match. We'll see. So this brings us to the segment, notable mention of Blake Monroe. I have been not looking forward to this for quite some time. I know that's a weird statement to say, but quite honestly, unfortunately, it was obvious to me the instant Mariah May was reported as a new signing by the WWE what they wanted to do. I thought they were going to bring her straight to the main roster, but they took her to NXT, which was insulting. It was insulting considering what Mariah May has done and why they acquired her. If you can't see the vision, the reason they acquired Mariah May, let's just be honest, is because of the storyline with Toni Storm. When that storyline happened with Toni Storm, her protege that betrayed her, the stiletto heel with the blood, it was arguably the biggest storyline on the planet in the world of wrestling, male or female. The WWE have a considerable problem with someone like Toni Storm, whether they don't report or talk about it, because WWE made Toni Storm want to leave wrestling at that point. That's how bad it was. And I think in certain ways, when you read or listen to the things Toni Storm was saying about her time in WWE and her departure from WWE, it did something to I guess, I wouldn't say to her mental health, but it wasn't a good place for her. She found her footing in AEW and as a WWE castoff became arguably the biggest star on the planet as a female wrestler. That is monumental. Now, what it has done for Toni Storm and can do for Toni Storm far exceeds what the WWE were ever willing to do for Toni Storm or ever did do for Toni Storm. So the WWE do not have a strong leg to stand on as far as trying to acquire Toni Storm back to the WWE. They can't do it. The glamorous Toni Storm is just an epic character. So, sorry, the glamorous is Mariah May. Sorry, the timeless Toni Storm is just a classic character of all time. Could work anytime in history. The W can't get her back. They just can't because AEW it's just better for her easily. It doesn't make sense to go back to WWE, especially the way they treated her in the past. So the second best thing is to get the other person within that great storyline. Mariah May, Toni Storm. They got Mariah May. Mariah May is also younger than Toni Storm. WWE believe they can work with something, and they can because she was fantastic in that storyline. However, especially since Mariah May, Blake Monroe, whatever you want to call her, since she turned up on NXT TV, I have realized that she's only as good as the person she performs with. So that made that storyline between Toni Storm and Mariah May so big and drastic was Toni Storm. It wasn't Mariah May. Because I've been watching Mariah May on NXT TV and she cannot catch that lightning in the bottle again, which tells me it wasn't her. She was very good, but that was because of who she was working with. Now you put her with somebody else, great, maybe on the main roster, and maybe that's why they're bumping her up to the main roster. Maybe you can find it, but she's not going to be the innovator of it, is all I'm saying. So I'm not necessarily looking forward to her being on the main roster. I think it's just a really cheap version of trying to do Toni Storm. So this brings us to the MFT promo between Talatunga and Solo when they came down and they interrupted the match, tore everybody up, as I said before. I really like what was done there. As far as Talatunga and Solo interrupting the match, I think I said in my last video that he is consummately a strong professional that just works very well in the business. He does his job extremely well. Solo, I'm being more impressed with Solo. Nothing to write home about. He is what he is. He's probably a mid-carder or just underneath, but he works it very well and he always does a good job. So I can't complain. I thought it was probably the best promo segment of the night, but unfortunately, I can't give it that award. I cannot give it that award. What I can do is move on to the Trick Williams and Sami Zayn segment, which both gets my P award and my promo of the night. It had to go to quite literally Trick Williams and the whole gingerbread man thing. Oh my God. Oh. The gingerbread man, they're having a funeral, they're having a ceremony. They did the X for the gingerbread man. Because the gingerbread man was hurt. And it was no kayfabe. Because the gingerbread man lost an arm. So, congratulations to Trick Willie Williams. Congratulations, sir. Winner of both Best Promo and MVP of the night. Congratulations to you, sir, Mr. Wolfpack. That brought us to the tag team match between Brie, Bella, and Paige versus Lash and Nia, the Irresistible Forces. Never thought they were going to win the titles back. Obviously, they're not. They're not. The match was all right. I don't think it was the greatest match ever. I'd like to see what happens with Lash and Nia now. That's very interesting to see what happens with them. You form them together to be this big powerhouse. It could still work. Let's make them diabolical over the next 6 months. I'd love to see what they do with those two. Always happy to see Paige back. I am not going into that again. So this brings us to the main event match, which was the Usos versus Talatanga and Solo Sikoa. Again, reasonable match. Nothing to write home about. The Usos looked okay. But what we knew we were going to get was Jacob Fatu at the end of the match. And of course we did. And once again, they're making this story very, very interesting. I like what they're doing with it. I'm invested at this point. This family tribal war, the use of the Tongan Death Grip. And I remember saying in my last video, the Tongan Death Grip, I hadn't seen it for a while. Apparently, neither of the Usos. That's it for me. If you like the content, please hit like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and I'll let you know when I'm uploading next. And until then, I have been Triple Crown Champ. See you next time.